My husband asked for a divorce 1 week after his green card arrived. Don't make this ugly, he said. Then I found his hidden messages calling me his American ATM. I signed his papers, then made copies of mine. Before that, I thought I had saved the man I loved. I met Daniel on a freezing afternoon in Denver. Daniel bumped into me near the pickup counter. Coffee splashed across my sleeve. Oh no, he said, grabbing napkins before I even reacted. I'm so sorry. That was my fault. I wasn't looking. I laughed because he looked more upset than I was. It's fine. It's just coffee. He shook his head, still dabbing uselessly at my coat. It is not just coffee if I ruined your day. That should not have worked on me. But it did. There was something gentle about him. He had this careful way of speaking, like every word had been chosen before it left his mouth. When he smiled, he looked almost embarrassed by it. He asked if he could buy me another coffee, and I said yes because I was cold, lonely, and flattered by the attention. We talked for almost an hour. He told me he was finishing a graduate program and trying to stay in the country legally after school. I told him I worked in marketing and spent most of my days pretending deadlines did not scare me. He laughed at the right moments. He listened closely. When my phone kept buzzing, he said, "You look like someone who carries too much." I hated how accurate that felt. After that day, he started showing up in small ways. A pastry dropped off at my office. A text asking if I got home safe. A voice memo late at night because he had seen something that reminded him of me. Daniel was sweet without being loud about it. When I talked, he did not rush me. When I had a hard day, he made tea and let me vent without trying to fix everything. He made my apartment feel less empty. He sat with me on the floor while I folded laundry. He helped carry groceries. He remembered little things, like the brand of crackers I bought when I was stressed. I thought love was supposed to feel dramatic. With Daniel, it felt calm. That was why I trusted it. Almost a year into our relationship, that calm disappeared. His immigration situation started closing in around him. The company he hoped would sponsor him backed out. Another option fell through. His student visa was running out, and every day he looked more exhausted. At first, he tried to hide it. "I'm fine," he would say, even though he barely ate. Then he stopped sleeping. He sat at my kitchen table with his laptop open, reading forums and legal articles until sunrise. Some nights, I woke up and found him staring at nothing. One Tuesday, I came home and found the apartment dark. Daniel was sitting at the table, his head in his hands. "Daniel?" He looked up, and his face was wet. "I have to leave," he said. I dropped my bag by the door. "What happened?" "There is no sponsorship. No extension. Nothing." His voice cracked. "I am going to lose everything." I walked over slowly and sat beside him. He covered his face again. "I am going to lose you." That sentence broke something open in me. I had spent most of my life being the reliable one. The one who handled problems. The one who stayed calm when other people fell apart. Seeing him like that made me feel like if I did not act, I was abandoning him. "We'll find another way," I said. He shook his head. "There is no other way." I stared at this man I believed loved me and said the words that changed my life. "Then marry me." He froze. "What?" "We can get married," I said. "We love each other. We're already together. We'll do it properly. We'll talk to an attorney. We'll file everything." He looked at me like I had handed him a miracle. "You would do that for me?" I reached across the table and took his hand. For us. 3 weeks later, we stood in a courthouse. I wore a simple cream dress I bought the day before. Daniel wore a suit with a loose thread on the sleeve. There were no flowers, no family, no fancy dinner afterward. I did not care. When the judge pronounced us married, Daniel kissed me with tears in his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered against my mouth. I smiled because I thought he was thanking me for believing in us. I did not understand yet that he was thanking me for opening the door. The immigration process was not romantic. It was invasive, expensive, and humiliating in ways I had not expected. We had to prove our marriage was real. Photos, bills, lease documents, bank statements, birthday cards, text messages, receipts. Every normal piece of our life became evidence. Every private detail felt like something we had to defend. The attorney's office knew me by my voice because I called so often. Elizabeth, the woman who usually answered the phone, would say, "Sophia, let me check the file," before I even finished explaining. The fees kept piling up. Filing fees. Attorney fees. Medical exam costs. Translation costs. More fees when something needed clarification. Because of where Daniel was in the process, he could not work for a long stretch. So I paid for everything. Rent, groceries, utilities, his phone, his car insurance, gas, doctor appointments, legal bills. At first, I told myself it was temporary. Then temporary became months. I worked all day, came home, cooked something cheap, and opened my laptop again. I started taking freelance design jobs at night because my salary alone was not enough. Small business logos, flyers, menus, social media graphics, anything that paid. Daniel would sometimes stand behind my chair and rub my shoulders. "You are doing too much," he would say. "I know. When I can work, I'll take care of you." I wanted to believe that so badly that I ignored what it was costing me. I ignored the headaches, the shaking hands, the unpaid credit card balances, the way I checked prices in the grocery aisle and put things back without telling him why. Sometimes resentment rose in me, sharp and ugly. Then Daniel would kiss my forehead and say, "I promise, this is for our future." And I would keep going. The interviews were worse than the paperwork. We sat in government offices under bright lights, while strangers asked questions about our marriage like they were searching for cracks. What side of the bed did he sleep on? What did we eat for dinner last night? Where did we keep the extra towels? Daniel held my hand under the table. He squeezed at the right moments. He looked nervous when he should have looked nervous. He smiled at me when the officer asked how we met. Afterward, in the parking lot, I cried from relief. He pulled me into his arms. One day this will just be a story. I believed him. Years passed like that. Waiting, paying, proving, hoping. When his permanent green card finally arrived, I was the one who found the envelope in the mail. I stood in the kitchen and stared at it before opening it. My hands were shaking. Daniel came up behind me and saw what I was holding. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. "We did it," I said. He took the card from me carefully, like it was fragile. Then he smiled. "We did." That night, we ordered dinner from a place we normally avoided because it was too expensive. We opened a bottle of wine. I let myself talk about the future in a way I had been too scared to before. Maybe we could move somewhere bigger. Maybe we could pay off the debt faster now. Maybe we could finally stop living like every month was an emergency. Daniel listened, nodding at the right places. But looking back, I can see it now. He was not relieved the way I was. He looked like a man who had finished a transaction. 1 week after the green card arrived, Daniel changed. Not in a slow, understandable way. Not like someone decompressing after years of stress. It was sudden enough that I noticed it immediately and confusing enough that I blamed myself. He stopped touching me. If I reached for his hand, he adjusted his sleeve or checked his phone. If I leaned against him on the couch, he stood up to get water. When I kissed him, he gave me his cheek. At first, I told myself he was overwhelmed. Then the criticism started. "You too loudly," he said one night at dinner. I looked up, embarrassed. "What?" He pushed food around his plate. "Nothing. Forget it." Another night, he snapped because I folded his shirt wrong. "It's just laundry," I said carefully. "It's never just one thing with you." I stood there holding the shirt, trying to understand how we had gotten from champagne and takeout to him looking at me like I irritated him by breathing. He started taking calls outside. He changed the angle of his laptop whenever I walked behind him. He stayed up late, but when I asked what he was doing, he said, "You're acting paranoid." I suggested counseling. He laughed under his breath. "You think therapy fixes everything?" "No," I said. "But something is wrong." He looked at me for a long moment. "Maybe what's wrong is that I don't want this anymore." I felt the words hit before I understood them. 2 weeks later, he moved to the couch. He said my breathing kept him awake. Then he said the bed felt too small. Then he said he needed space. I started walking through my own apartment like a guest who had overstayed. I measured my voice before speaking. I apologized when he sighed. I gave him room because I thought if I loved him correctly, he might come back to me. 3 months after the green card arrived, Daniel asked me to sit down at the kitchen table. That table had seen everything. Bills, immigration documents, late-night meals. My laptop open at 2 in the morning. His tears the night I proposed. He sat across from me with no emotion on his face. "I want a divorce," he said. I waited for something else. Something softer. Something human. He gave me nothing. "I don't feel the same," he said. We grew apart. My throat tightened. "We just got through everything." "I know. Daniel, we fought for years to get here." He looked tired, but not sad. "That doesn't mean I owe you the rest of my life." I started crying before I could stop myself. I hated that he got to sit there clean and dry while I fell apart in front of him. Please, I said. Just try counseling. Give us 1 month. No. 1 week. Sophia. The way he said my name was cold enough to shut me up. He stood and walked to the sink, turning his back to me. Pack a bag. Go stay with your sister. I stared at him. You're kicking me out of my own apartment? I need space, he said. The apartment was in both our names. Most of the furniture was mine. I had paid nearly every bill. But in that moment, I was so shattered I did not argue. I packed like someone underwater. Clothes, toiletries, phone charger. I forgot half of what I needed because my hands would not stop shaking. When I called my sister, I could barely speak. Jennifer did not ask questions. She just said, "Come here." I spent 3 days in her spare room staring at the ceiling. She brought me soup I did not eat. She sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed my back like I was a child. What happened? She asked gently. I don't know, I said. That was the worst part. I replayed every fight, every cold glance, every time he moved away from me. I wondered if I had become too tired, too stressed, too resentful. I wondered if the years of paperwork and bills had turned me into someone he could no longer love. On the 4th day, the weather dropped hard, and I realized I had left my heavy coat at the apartment. Daniel had mentioned a job interview that afternoon, so I knew he would be gone. I told Jennifer, "I'm just getting my coat." She gave me a look. "Do you want me to come?" "No. I'll be quick." The apartment felt wrong when I unlocked the door. His shoes were by the couch. A blanket was folded where he had been sleeping. A mug sat in the sink. My life was still there, but it no longer felt like mine. I went into the bedroom and opened the closet. That was when I saw his tablet on the nightstand. It was plugged in, screen still awake, with a message notification at the top. I should have walked away. But when your marriage collapses without warning, your mind looks for a reason the way a drowning person looks for air. The tablet was still unlocked. A browser window was open, synced to his messages. The conversation on the screen was with a woman named Olivia. At first, I thought she was new. Then I scrolled. My legs went weak before I fully understood what I was reading. I sat on the edge of the bed, then lowered myself to the floor because I did not trust myself to stay upright. The messages went back years. Olivia was not some recent mistake. She was not a woman he met after things got hard. She had been there before me. He had a whole relationship with her before he ever spilled coffee on my sleeve. The messages were in another language, but the translation tool made enough of it clear. Too clear. A message from the week we met read, "I found someone. Older. Lonely. Good job. Perfect target." I stopped breathing for a second. I scrolled again. There were jokes about me. About my laugh. My body. My apartment. My job. He called me needy. He called me useful. Then I found the line that hollowed me out. "The American ATM is working late again. She thinks it is for our future." I read that sentence several times, waiting for it to become less real. It did not. There were messages from nights I remembered clearly. Nights I had stayed up designing flyers to pay his attorney fees while he brought me tea and called me his future. To Olivia, he wrote, "Just a little longer. Once I get the permanent card, I can end it and bring you." He had planned the divorce. He had planned the coldness. He had planned the fights. He had even written, "If I make her miserable enough, she will leave first." I found screenshots of money transfers too. The spending money I had given him, the cash I thought he used for gas or food, had gone to Olivia. Rent. Clothes. Trips. Her apartment overseas. The crying stopped. It was not strength. It was shock so deep it became quiet. I sat on the floor for hours, reading the history of my own humiliation. When my phone rang, I almost dropped the tablet. It was Jennifer. "Are you okay?" she asked. I looked at the screen in my hand. "No," I said. "But I need 1 more hour." "Sophia, what happened?" I found the reason. I did not confront him. That was the first smart thing I did. I sent the messages to myself. I saved screenshots. I copied the transfer records. I took photos of anything that showed dates, names, intent, money, and the plan to bring Olivia after divorcing me. Then I put the tablet back exactly where I found it. I grabbed my coat. Before I left, I stood in the doorway of the bedroom and looked at the bed where I had spent years sleeping beside a man who hated me while benefiting from my love. I locked the door behind me and drove back to my sister's house with the evidence sitting in my inbox like a second heartbeat. A week later, Daniel asked to meet at a quiet coffee shop downtown. He looked polished when he arrived. New jacket. Fresh haircut. Calm face. I looked like someone who had not slept properly in days, which was exactly what he expected. He placed a folder on the table and slid it toward me. Uncontested divorce, he said. This will make things easier. I opened the folder. You already had this prepared? His mouth tightened. Don't make this ugly. I looked up at him. He leaned closer, lowering his voice. You don't want to fight. You can't afford one. Sign it, walk away, and we both move on. For a moment, all I could hear was the coffee machine behind the counter. Then I thought about the messages. Perfect target. American ATM. She'll sign anything. I picked up the pen. Daniel watched me carefully, probably waiting for tears. I signed. He looked almost disappointed by how easy it was. I wish you the best, I said. He gave a small nod, like he had won. He did not know that while he was walking out with my signature, I was going home to print every word he thought I would never see. My sister's dining table became the place where my grief turned into evidence. Jennifer worked long shifts, so most days the house was quiet. I printed message after message until the stack grew thick. I organized everything by date. I matched his words to the immigration timeline. I highlighted the messages where he admitted he chose me for papers. I saved the transfers that showed my money going to Olivia. I did not exaggerate. I did not need to. Daniel had documented his own betrayal better than I ever could. Michael, one of the few friends I trusted, came over one evening and saw the binder open on the table. He read one page, then looked at me with disgust on his face. Sophia, he said quietly. This is not just cheating. I know. This is fraud. I closed the binder. I know. He sat across from me. What are you going to do? Part of me wanted to disappear. Change my number, move apartments, never hear Daniel's name again. But every time I considered doing nothing, I saw myself at 2 a.m, working until my eyes burned while he sent my money to another woman. He had not made one selfish mistake. He had built a life on my exhaustion. So I waited until the divorce was finalized. I let the judge sign. I let Daniel believe I had walked away quietly because I was too broken to fight. The next morning, I put on a blazer, tied my hair back, and carried the binder into the Federal Immigration Building. At the security desk, a man named Brian asked why I was there. I need to report marriage fraud, I said. His expression changed. Not dramatically, but enough. He directed me to the proper office and told me to wait. I sat for almost 3 hours with the binder on my lap. People came and went. Phones rang. A child cried near the vending machines. I sat still, my hands resting on the cover. When someone finally called me back, I placed the binder on the desk. The officer opened it. The first few pages were a timeline. After that came the messages, the transfers, the screenshots, and the translated copies. I watched his face shift as he read. This is all from your husband, he asked. Ex-husband, I said. As of yesterday. He looked at another page. And this woman? The girlfriend he planned to bring here after using me. The officer asked questions. I answered everyone as clearly as I could. I did not beg him to destroy Daniel. I only handed over what I had and signed what they asked me to sign. Before I left, he said, these cases take time. I understand. And I did. For months, nothing happened. That was the hardest part. Daniel kept posting like he had won. Michael would occasionally hear things through mutual connections. Daniel had gotten hired by a software company. He was going to nice restaurants. He bought a newer car. He looked rested, confident, almost glowing. Meanwhile, I was rebuilding from debt and humiliation in a small apartment with second-hand furniture. Some nights, I wondered if the binder had disappeared into a drawer somewhere. I wondered if Daniel really had beaten the system and if I was foolish for believing truth mattered just because I had proof. Then Olivia flew into Denver. I did not know she was coming until afterward. Michael heard it from someone who still followed Daniel online. Apparently, Daniel had been bragging privately that she was visiting soon. They were going to look at apartments. He had told people she was an old friend, but her name had been flagged. When she landed, she was pulled aside for secondary inspection. I do not know every detail of what happened in that room. I only know what I was later told through the updates that reached me. They questioned her about Daniel. They reviewed her phone. The messages were still there. Maybe she thought deleting some things was enough. Maybe she panicked. Maybe she believed Daniel when he told her Americans were stupid and easy to fool. She was denied entry. Her visa was canceled. She was put on a return flight, crying and furious, with a warning that coming back would not be simple after what they had found. Daniel called me that night. I stared at his name on my screen until it stopped ringing. Then he texted. What did you do? Another message came seconds later. Sophia, answer me. Then another. You ruined my life. For the first time in months, I smiled. Not because I was happy, because he finally understood that I had not been weak. I had been quiet. Daniel was called in after that. His status came under review. He was placed into removal proceedings. It did not happen in one dramatic movie scene where someone ripped a card from his wallet. It was slower than that, more bureaucratic, more humiliating. Letters, interviews, hearings, delays. But the outcome became clear. His marriage had been built on fraud, and his own messages proved intent. I should have stopped there. Maybe that is where a better person would have stopped. But I had one more envelope. I did not send rumors. I did not write a long emotional letter. I sent copies of his own messages to the ethics contact at his company, especially the ones where he mocked the people around him and talked about using the system to get ahead. Karen, the woman at the front desk, signed for the package and forwarded it internally. 2 days later, Daniel was suspended. A week after that, he was fired. The company did not announce why, but Michael heard enough to confirm they had opened an internal review. Daniel's new life, the one he thought he had earned by stepping over me, started collapsing piece by piece. Olivia cut him off after she was sent home. That part surprised me less than it should have. He had been useful to her as long as he was a doorway into a better life. Once that door closed, he became just a man with no job, legal trouble, and a trail of evidence behind him. Months later, Daniel left the country. Whether he called it voluntary departure or deportation did not matter to me. He was gone. The day I heard, I was sitting on the floor of my new apartment assembling a cheap bookshelf. One of the screws would not go in straight. My hands were dusty. My hair was falling out of its clip. My phone buzzed with a message from Michael. He's gone. I read it once. Then I put the phone down and tightened the screw. That was the moment I expected to feel victory. I thought I would laugh, cry, open a bottle of wine, call Jennifer and say it was over. Instead, I felt tired. Not guilty exactly. Not proud either. Just tired in a way that seemed to live in my bones. A few people who know the whole story think I did the right thing. Michael told me Daniel earned every consequence. He targeted you, he said. You didn't invent his choices. Jennifer was not so sure. One night, she came over with takeout and found me sitting at the kitchen counter, staring at nothing. She set the bags down and said, "Can I ask you something without you getting angry?" I already knew what was coming. Go ahead. She sat across from me. Do you feel better? I looked down at my hands. No. Her face softened. That's what scares me. I frowned. What does? That he took so much from you and then revenge took the rest. I wanted to defend myself. I wanted to tell her it was justice, not revenge. I wanted to list everything Daniel did until she understood that he did not just break my heart. He studied me, used me, and laughed while I worked myself sick for him. But Jennifer already knew that. She reached across the counter and touched my wrist. He deserved consequences, she said. I believe that. But I don't want him to be the reason you become hard forever. That sentence stayed with me longer than I wanted it to. Because the truth is, I do not know what I became. I know what he did. He chose me because I was kind. He mistook kindness for stupidity. He turned my love into paperwork, my labor into money, my marriage into a strategy. I also know that when the time came, I did not simply walk away and let life handle him. I picked up the evidence. I printed it. I delivered it. I made sure every door he used me to open slammed shut in his face. Some days, that feels like justice. Other days, when the apartment is too quiet and the anger has nowhere to go, I wonder if I crossed a line I can never uncross. I am not asking because I think Daniel was innocent. He wasn't. I am asking because the part of me that loved him is gone, and I do not know whether he killed it or I did. So tell me honestly, did I become the villain when I destroyed the life he stole from me, or did I just give him the ending he worked so hard to earn?